He is the lead singer of one of the best 80s bands of all time, Mr. Cy Curnin from the 80s band The Fixx. Cy, how are you doing today?
Very well indeed. Hello.
So, Cy, take me back in time when you were growing up in England, and who were your major musical influences? Who did you love listening to growing up?
Well, back then there was a lot of David Bowie, Mark Bolan, T-Rex, the Stones, The Who. It's kind of widespread, a lot of reggae. London had a lot of reggae because we had a lot of Jamaican immigrants coming from Jamaica in the 50s, and so their music infused the sound of London. We had a lot of soul, too, a lot of soul radio stations, so I had a quite broad palette to choose from. And I found anything that had really good touching vocals, sort of lyrics that spoke to me growing up, inspired me. And then there were a lot of American bands. There was Talking Heads way back. I remember really latching onto that, and Roxy Music, mid-'70s. And then that kind of formed the sound of the band, because when the band formed, we were a bunch of eclectic guys. We were all fairly middle class, but reacting against our own backgrounds. We just felt that the world was just starting to fall asleep. People were starting to get easy credit cards and easy credit, and all of a sudden shopping became the main thing on people's agenda. It didn't seem to be about living anymore. It just seemed about shopping.
How did you meet up with Adam Woods?
He was dating my sister at college. I was like 3 or 4 years younger, and he was playing in a band at college. My sister invited me to go see them, and I was my usual fronty self. I said, "Yeah, band's not bad, but your song's crap." So they were like, "Who's this cheeky guy?" So I kind of muscled my way in and started writing songs with them, and then the band kind of evolved from there.
You guys were originally called The Portraits. Now, what made you guys change from the band name The Portraits to The Fixx?
Well, that was when Jamie West Oram, the guitarist, joined. We had a sound in The Portraits. Rupert was already in the band, and Charlie Barrett, the bass player on the first Fixx album. But when Jamie joined, there was a kind of a quantum leap in the sound, just the way that Jamie played, and everyone in the band responded accordingly, and the sound became really spacious. And we felt we owed it to ourselves to really just start as a new band with Jamie and a new sound, and the writing impetus changed. We signed a publishing deal, and we had a rehearsal space in the bowels of an old factory in London, and we rehearsed 6 days a week religiously. It was like a day job for us. We were in there writing, and then we were playing at night. And so at that point, we changed the name.
Very cool. And what's the inspiration side behind the tune Lost Planes in 1981?
Well, the direct inspiration was on the front page of the paper. There was a plane that had taken off from London without enough fuel, and the guy fell out of the sky. And I just felt, and I just sort of associated in my head that we're all a little bit like that. We take off on these huge concepts, and we don't really have enough fuel, mental fuel, to keep going. And then we just fall out of our own skies without having reached any destination.
So very, very true, Si. So very, very true. And one of the great tracks that was found on the first studio album was a wonderful track called Stand or Fall. Now, was that based kind of on like two simple guitar chords? How did that all come about?
Yeah, that came about. Actually, there was a piano chord. I woke up in the morning and was just in a certain mood, and I just played the doo-doo. It became the classic signature riff. But then when Jamie played it, it had a much more plaintive tone. And again, the song was written on 1980, 81, London, Reagan in power in the States, Margaret Thatcher in power in England. They were talking about limited nuclear warfare over the skies of Europe, and nobody seemed to be asking us our opinion. It was just, I felt really impotent. Now, I was a little bit of an activist, and I thought music was going to be my tool, but I still felt vaguely impotent that nobody was discussing these things in a kind of referendum platform. It was just closed-door politics. And that song and Red Skies both came out of that sense of frustration.
Yeah. Okay. So Red Skies was kind of based on the same concept as Stand or Fall.
The same theme of a threat of nuclear war. Because at that time the Russians were still playing rattling their sabers and pretending to be the big angry commies on the block. We all went on to know that they were just empty cardboard tanks later on. But at that time the threat was real, and they had nuclear warheads. And it only took one crazy guy to make the wrong decision, and we'd all have been smoked.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that. No doubt about that. And the 1983 album Reach the Beach, which is one of my personal favorites out of your musical catalog, became one of the band's most successful commercial albums. I love the music video for the tune Saved by Zero. How did that video come about? I know there's a story behind that.
It was just, I think, the song was, I wrote it from the point of view of you can't fall from the floor. When you find yourself drained out and you have absolutely nothing in you, it's a starting place. You can only go up from there. And so we met this director, Brian, I forget his surname now, Brian something or other. Nice guy who came in with the concept of, I used to like painting, and my mother was a painter and artist, so he kind of set the scene as me as a starving artist, which I was in musical terms. He just set the story of Saved by Zero and an artist not being able to pay the rent and selling out. Videos tended to, in those days, it was early on, there were a lot of extras suddenly appearing and actors walking around the stage, and I found it a little confusing, to be honest. But luckily, the enigma of the song went on, and it was bigger than the video, and still gets a bit of attention today.
Yeah, it's a great, great song. Another great music video that I remember here in the States on MTV in real heavy rotation was the tune One Thing Leads to Another. How did you come up with that brilliant track?
That was 10 minutes after we went down the pub. We were having a bit of a sort of creative block that morning, so we went, let's go down the pub, and we had an Irish landlord who had a pub next door to where we rehearsed. He used to take care of us. So we all had a couple of pints of Guinness, and for us, that's like holy water.
Yeah, that'll change everything.
Changed that whole mood. We went back in there. Jamie picked up his guitar with a nice little beer buzz on. He was like, yip, chip, chip, chop in. And off you go. The words just started spouting out, and I think later that evening I kind of honed on a theme that was, I think at the time there'd been some politician that was busted for not having remembered what he'd said, but he was being accused of lying. And he ran into his own lie further down the road, and it blew his career. So that's what One Thing Leads to Another is about. And I just like the fact that a pop song starts with the deception with tact. Like not your usual lyric, but it got away, and it still gets played today, so I'm happy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The album Phantoms hit the music scene later on that year, and I always loved the track Are We Ourselves, which was a huge hit here on American rock radio here in the States. And what's the great story behind that? Because I think there's a deep concept in that tune. Yeah,
well, I guess the whole theme behind Phantoms as a piece of work was, after Reach the Beach, our lives changed dramatically. You have huge success, you're out on the road, and we were writing all this material in another environment. At least my head was just in a different world. And things that I thought were stable in my life were no longer stable, breakdown of marriage, and you start to feel a little bit like a phantom in your own life. And so the question, are we ourselves, is, it was a juxtaposition between are we ourselves in terms of our thinking before we're indoctrinated by the system, and then also in the video we sort of take the fact that are we alone in the universe. And so we played those two concepts in the song and just laid it out over a great little funky groove. And for those people who wanted to dig a little deeper in the questioning, it kind of hit. Because I think, when you're growing up, adolescent, teenager, college years, you start asking yourself some questions about your own existence, and those are the things I like to write about. And I definitely was questioning my own reasons for being around at the time,
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. The 80s were a different decade altogether. I mean, worldwide, it was just so many different things were happening with our world that, I'm glad you guys put it through music, because that's pretty powerful in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you could look back now, you could say that, it was the beginning of a great hurrah party in terms of free money and deregulating everything, but it was the beginning of the change.
Right.
It was like the last party before we all had to stop and start behaving responsibly and collectively, which is pretty much where we're all grinding to now. So even though it was a very original music movement, and there was a lot of opportunity and openness and wildness and a lot of new concepts and freedom, at the same time, I think it was humanity's last hurrah at being selfish.
If you have the original 45 of Are We Ourselves, the flip side was a great track called Deeper and Deeper, but that was originally recorded as like a 6.5-minute song, right? Yeah,
that was like a one-off song. We did that for the Streets of Fire. There was a guy he's now the head of, what do you call it, the big record company, God, the biggest one on the planet. I can't remember the name now. Not Universal, the other one.
Sony.
Jimmy Iovine.
Sony?
No, the other one. Warner Brothers. It became Warner Brothers. Interscope. There you go.
Gotcha. Okay.
The head of Interscope. He wasn't head of Interscope then, but he's now. He came to us and said, "Would you write a movie? I'm doing the soundtrack for this film. Would you write a song for the movie? And I said, sure. And she said, I'll be in New York in a few weeks, and I'll come and hear something. And so his secretary made an appointment to come and hear the track. And Jamie and I were living in the same building. He was living below me. And all of a sudden, I went, oh, my God, Ivy's coming around today to hear the song, and I hadn't even written anything. So I called Jamie up, and he's like, oh, crap, what are we going to do? So I just started playing this riff, and it just had that sense of urgency. Literally, we just got the first thing down. I just had a little 4-track machine then, and hit play, record, and the doorbell rang, and it was Jimmy Ivy come to hear the track.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa. And so he came in, and he's like, Mr. Cool, he's a really sweet guy, and he came in, and he's like, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds really great. Let's go to lunch.
Perfect.
So that was done. And then a few weeks later, we recorded it with the band, and it went on to be a huge rock hit. For the last thing, it was #1 for 12 weeks. And I, like an idiot, said because it wasn't written in the concept of a Phantoms album, I didn't want it on the album. But with high insight, I should have put it on there.
Right.
It would have helped sell our album rather than the Streets of Fire soundtrack. But hey, at least it was out there.
Right. And speaking of Streets of Fire, too, I stumbled across an article that said that you guys recorded a song called A Letter to Both Sides for the Chevy Chase American movie Fletch.
Yeah, that's right.
How did that process all come about?
Well, when you're having hits, the people that are putting the movies together, they want to have names that are recognized to help sell the movie. Mm-hmm. It was like Breakfast Club, and they were using that thing, and so we were getting our fair share of requests, and we were writing quite a lot of songs, and we were working with Rupert Hine, the producer, who was he was staying in touch with which film director needed what, and so they were just trading out these songs, and we were like, oh, great, these are good, because they were all extra songs that weren't going to be on the record. Mm-hmm. And they just kept coming. I wish they'd have them now.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, we could do with a few more now.
You never know, Si. You never know, my friend.
You
never know who's going to come knocking on that door. You never know. The band's fourth studio album, Walkabout, was released and was home to the great tune Secret Separation, which was a big #1 rock hit here in the States. Secret Separation, how'd you guys come up with that?
Yeah, Secret Separation, that was a lyric written by a close friend of the band called Jeanette Obstoy. She was one of the reasons we were signed in the first place, and she directed the video for Stand or Fall. She directed the video for Are We Ourselves, Some People. She didn't do, and One Thing Leads to Another she did. And she wrote this lyric, Secret Separation. I just happened to be in a blue mood that day, and we wrote that song, and it just came out very naturally. But what I realized was that as a singer, it was more important to interpret someone else's lyrics, because up until that point, I'd always been singing my own lyrics. Mm-hmm. So as a singer, you learn how to put your own emotions through someone else's emotions of words, and you learn, and you become, it gives you a different insight to you as a musician. And also I could see that there was a different effect, because my emotion and the male view of certain thinking was different. Here we had a female, a woman's interpretation of emotion, and that brought different crowds to the backstage area, and we could talk differently,
Absolutely. Kind of opened up the door to new musical opportunities for you guys,
exactly,
too. So.
And also just emotions, so it just opened me up.
1988, you guys returned here in America with the album Calm Animals, and the big rock hit on that album was Driven Out. Driven Out, is there a story behind that?
Yeah, Driven Out, that was kind of, Earth Day was just forming around that period. It was like the first Earth Day. The environmental movement had kicked in as something I felt quite fresh about, because I'm a keen fisherman. I like to spend a lot of time in nature, and I was just starting to hear and get a bit panicked of the way pollution was biting through, and I was all for this movement. And then we recorded that album in Caribbean at Air Studios. George Martin had a studio in Montserrat. We recorded that album there.
Wow.
It was very much more a guitar-based record, because I picked up the guitar and started writing on guitar pretty much exclusively for that record. So there's a change in feel, change in producer too. We didn't work with Rupert Hine, who'd made the first 4 records. We worked with Will Whitman, who'd done The Outfield and Cyndi Lauper up to that point. Mm-hmm. So he came in and steered us into a slightly different sound. But looking back, I really like the sound of that record.
Yeah, it's a great record. Great record. And then, Si, I'm hearing that you guys are working on a new album called Beautiful Friction?
That's right, yeah. We're up to that right now, yeah. It's going to be out. The release date is July 17th. It comes out on Curnin Records, which is a division of Sony.
Okay.
and that'll be out July 17. And I think the first single, is a song called Anyone Else, which will be moved out June 4th. I think it goes to radio.
Okay. Awesome. I can't wait to hear that. That's going to be great. I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah, that's good. And it's been a while. We've spent 3-4 years working on it, and let me tell you, the title, Beautiful Friction, is what it implies. There was a lot of creative, not conflict, but it was a tough birth.
Right.
I think as you get older and you look back over the legacy of your work, it's tougher to find something where 5 guys are all really happy about one thing. So we have to go that extra mile,
Right. And are you guys going to go on tour side with that album, or what?
Yeah, we'll be out. We're pretty much out all the time, but
okay.
There'll be a bigger summer leg. And what we like to do is because we live in England, we tend to we'll come in for a weekend or do 2 weekends and a week in the middle. So we come out for 10 days every couple of months.
Okay.
And if the album picks up, then sure, we'll be touring a bit more.
Wonderful. Well, Cy Curnin from the 80s band, The Fixx, thank you so very much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, JJ. Take care, man.